Hello, lovers. This is And Just Like That, The Writer's Room, the official companion podcast from Max. I'm Michael Patrick King, writer, director, and executive producer of And Just Like That. But before that, I was writer and director and executive producer of Sex and the City. And believe it or not, this summer marks the 25th anniversary of the premiere of Sex and the City. And I think it's a pretty big deal. So before we get into the new season of And Just Like That, we thought we had to mark this occasion with some pretty big deal guests. So joining us today to celebrate and reflect on the legacy is Sarah Jessica Parker.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Charlie.
Cynthia Nixon.
Woohoo!
And Kristin Davis.
Hello, hello, hello.
Well, you know, icons, muses since it's the writing room, I can tell you that the reason that I'm writing still is because I'm writing for you three.
Aww.
Because the idea
Michael.
that you get to write a character for 25 years is unheard of. I mean, novelists get to write a character for 25 years, but you don't get to write a character and then watch the same actor play it. So let's go back 25 years. My first question.
With pleasure.
My first question is, what did you think you were getting involved in? Someone came to you and said, do this show, Sex and the City, on this thing called HBO, which was not a brand yet, really. It was a destination, but it wasn't like, ooh. What did you think people were asking you to do, Sarah Jessica?
Well, I think I have to start by saying I'm not really sure anymore what I remember, what I've made up, what I've said, what's been said to me, because we've had occasions with one another or sometimes in an interview to be asked about like the provenance, the early days. What I will say is that to me at the time, HBO was a channel that wealthy families had in their homes. Like we didn't have HBO. That was an extravagance. That was for people with disposable income. So you would try to get yourself invited to a home that had HBO, or say a friend when you moved out.
Or a motel have HBO. Remember, it was like a sign. It was a thing.
Yes.
When I was asked about it, Kevin Yvain called me, who's my agent now of 38 years, and said that
Baby.
Darren Star had reached out and there was a script and that he thought of me to play this part. And he reminded me who Darren Star was because I wasn't entirely sure because I didn't know.
You weren't watching
I
Melrose
wasn't.
Place?
And I also
You
just
weren't watching
wasn't.
Kristin on Melrose Place at the time?
I made up for it. But I think also at the time, and even still to some degree, I wasn't aware, I don't know if you guys were, of like who the producers were in Hollywood, like who was making. So
Of course not. Theater, movies.
And also just
Right.
it was
I was
just
aware.
a world away. Yes.
Well, you were in Hollywood.
And
Kristin was in Hollywood.
Kristin was in
Sarah Jessica and Cynthia were
We're
home based in New York.
Yeah, and so I read the script and I thought it was very compelling, and I met with him and I had a couple questions, some practical questions, some creative questions, not interrogation, but more so, you know, how do you imagine this and why me? And because it was a different idea of me in my head, and thus, you know, an agreement was reached happily.
And do you remember what he said about, like, why you? Do you remember?
He said he just had my voice in his head. That's how he described it. And I didn't pursue it further because there was a part of me that didn't want to know why.
Right.
But it seemed, at least he for sure knew I wasn't Mary Louise Parker. Or, you know, like I was like,
Right.
It's for sure me that you're imagining. I like the idea of imagining this as well. There was a question I had about nudity and what his expectations were and how he might feel if I was uncomfortable with that idea. He was very open to that not being necessary. There were a couple other
For
questions.
your character.
For my character. And I also had scheduling questions because I was doing a play at the time and I was about to get married, which I wasn't sharing with anybody, and I wanted to make sure I could still take care of those obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And he was open to all of it. And you know, it was 30 minutes or so.
Wow.
That was meaning like
That's not that long.
that's what the show was.
Well, it was completely not commercial.
You know, yes.
I mean, even the title of
It was
the
like
show.
a boutique of this. It was like a boutique little
very
thing,
much.
and it felt that way to us for years.
I mean, the IP, the source material, of course, is Candace Bushnell's brittle, brilliant Sex and the City columns,
Which I
are,
knew
which
quite
of course,
well.
New Yorkers. And it was very brittle, very female driven. So already we're not in the network world. We're completely not in the usual brand. Now, Kristin, you had worked with Darren on Melrose Place, yes?
Yeah.
And did he call you up and say, hey,
Yeah,
come
tell
on
us
and do
everything.
the show?
I want to rehear it. I like all these stories.
So on Melrose, I was in LA going on like 12 auditions a day, just killing myself trying to get a job. And then I got Brooke on Melrose, and I was so excited. So I got that, which I thought was like the be all and end all. Come to find out, not so much, no offense to Melrose lovers, but it was hard. It was a factory and there were 80 million cast members at that point. Darren leaves, right, to go do, I believe, Central Park West, or is that correct?
I don't remember.
Yes, something that didn't necessarily pan out, but he was gone. So he had said to me when I got there, I like you for this part because you're funny. And I was like, really? I'm supposed to be funny? Because, there were no jokes,
Kristin's
right?
worst phrase, supposed to be.
True. It's true. It's so true, Michael. You know this. So then he leaves, right? And all these other writers are like, we don't know what to do with that character. We don't know what to do with that girl. Oh, my God. They fire me. They put...
What?
They kill me. Yeah, I died. Brooke died.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Then he sends me the script, the talk of the town in my
LA,
world.
which is different than the talk
LA.
of the
Yeah,
town
sorry.
in New
Sorry,
York.
the talk of Los Angeles or Hollywood, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, was Sex and the City because it was so
Really?
unusual. Yes.
Wow.
I had no idea.
Amongst women. All
Actors, you
my
mean.
actresses friends.
Okay.
Had no idea.
Because everyone wanted it. So he sends it with a letter, or maybe he called me and said, well, we really want Sarah Jessica, or we wanted Sarah Jessica, or whatever, and she's worried and she may not do it. So you need to read, I know. You
Clever
need
of me, wasn't it? I don't recall this at all, but
The
maybe it
hook,
was Kevin.
The bait and switch.
They say, we don't know if Sarah's going to do it, so will you read for Carrie? And I was like, what? So in the script, you remember the original script, Carrie was much more like Candace, and she smoked, and she swore, and she, do you remember this, right? And I was like, well, I can't possibly. And I remember one line in the script, it said, Carrie has the body of Heather Locklear and the mind of Dorothy Parker. And I was
Wow.
like, that is adorable, but I can't play that part. Like, what you thinking?
What?
Back to the writing
hello?
room, that kind of sentence destroys people.
It's true.
Because it's an impossible standard, but
Yeah.
apparently not, because we got
Right,
somebody with the
exactly.
body of Heather Locklear and the mind of
100%.
Dorothy Parker.
100%.
And you don't need to say anything. You can just keep having
You
your
just
breakfast.
be quiet over there
We're
with your
saying it.
bacon. Right. So I was like, Darren, I can't play Carrie. I can't even read for Carrie. I am this other girl who's like underwritten, but I understand her. Okay? I need to be her. And he was like, oh, okay. So I go in, I read, I think it's fine. Darren comes out. And he's wound up, and you can tell. And his arms are flying around, and he's like, you've got to go back in, and you've got to be funny. You've got to make it funny. And I'm like, but there's like no jokes, Darren. I'm like in the waiting room, right? I'm like, how do I make it funny? And he's like, you guys just be bigger.
and
His arms
thus
at me.
Charlotte was born.
Well, I mean, was she or wasn't
No,
she, right?
she was
Like,
not
kidding.
I
born.
was like,
The panic of
You know how
Charlotte was
big
born.
Charlotte
exactly,
is.
the
The
panic.
you must be a certain way of Charlotte was born.
100%.
It's interesting because my experience with HBO is not bigger. Just kind of like,
agree.
I mean, it's usually the
Yes.
actual experience of doing the show was smaller.
Yes.
Cynthia, origin story.
I feel like I know a little bit because I feel like we've talked about
Oh,
this.
I don't remember Cynthia's
Okay,
origin
well,
story.
as I was listening to people talking, I was like, actually, I did a show at HBO. I did Tanner 88
Oh, that's
in
right.
1988.
That was
That's
a
right.
legendary miniseries.
right.
It wasn't a
Oh,
series.
right.
It was
That
like,
was
yeah,
so
it was like
good.
7 episodes or something.
Yeah.
But so, I was whatever I was, 30, 31, whatever I was, and, lifelong New Yorker. And anyway, this show showed up. And, back in the first one or two seasons, Carrie there were all these people who would speak to the camera about
Right,
their
right.
experiences, little mini things. And it was more about the people Carrie was sort of covering in the press. So it
7
seemed-
million people on the island of Manhattan.
Right. They brought me in to audition for Carrie. I auditioned and they were like, yeah, not so much. And I said to myself, and I'm usually
Bigger,
not
bigger, bigger.
and I'm usually not so proactive, but I was like, at the time, it didn't seem like there were 4 women. It seemed there was like 7. Because in the
Now there are.
and now there are.
And
That's
just like
interesting.
that.
And I was like, it's a show that shoots in New York. This never happens.
Yeah.
There's got to be one of those women I can play.
There you go.
Couldn't they see me for somebody else? So they came back and they said, yeah, not a Carrie, but, read for Miranda. And my manager of like however many years, I can't even calculate it. She said to me before I went in for Miranda, she was like, maybe you could comb your hair. Maybe you could wear some lipstick.
Lipstick.
And I was like, okay, whatever, And they auditioned me a lot of times. I don't know how many times. And then I also tested in New York. And I can't even remember what month that was.
Springish?
It was very
spring.
early. You were not attached yet. It was, or that we knew about.
Yeah.
It was very early. And then the 2 weeks came and went and nothing.
Oh, wow.
And so I auditioned for many other things. I was kind of needing money. I never did a series in LA, but I was like, I kind of need money. So I tested for 3 more
That's
shows.
right. I remember this.
I
That's
tested
right.
for Ally McBeal. I tested for the Fran McDormand part in the TV series they were then trying to make of Fargo. And I tested for
Wow.
some thing where I played a nun or something. I can't remember. And I didn't get any of them. And I remember Becky Baker said to me, what this means, all this like failing, it means you're about to get something, which was really sweet.
That's true.
And my manager, Emily, who was at that time my agent, kept, pushing them. And they would always say the same thing, which was, we like her. She's the top of the list. We haven't found anyone we like better, but we're just not ready to pull the trigger.
Oh my God.
And so literally months went by.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, so you auditioned. You might have been the top of that
I was
year.
very
You
early.
might have
It was
been.
like,
Cold
it was
weather.
very
Wow.
early.
Cold
Very,
weather.
very early. And so then I got an offer of like not a great part in a pilot that was like a pilot presentation, but it was like no one else was being seen and they were starting to film on Friday. And if I only flew and read, we would go right into rehearsal. Like there was no chance I was not going to get it. And I actually was throwing a Passover Seder for my boyfriend's family. Like it was a huge thing and I had been, preparing for a long time. And I was like, I don't want to miss this event, which is like Wednesday night. Because they wanted to test me earlier or something. And they were finally like, fine, you can fly out Thursday and, whatever. And so we pushed off the but it was like there was no chance that this one wasn't going to happen. It was like I was shooting so below my whatever, fighting weight, whatever that sports phrase would be. My manager, Emily, after months of badgering them and now days leading up to this, she just badgered them all day long. She would call them like every couple hours and be like, you're losing her in 24 hours. You're losing her in 17 hours.
Yay,
you're losing her
Emily.
in,
Yeah.
And she finally cried on the phone. She was like, you guys are crazy. This is the person for this part. She cried. And she called me at like 9 p.m., like in the midst of the Seder to say, okay, they said yes.
All right. Well,
Well,
the
thank
amazing
God.
thing here
What's
is
so great is that,
My
none of
feelings are
us, I'm
never
going to get
getting
back to you,
neutral.
Michael, in a second.
it's not me.
But
I've heard it all.
the thing that's so funny about all of these is that, like I've said over the years, what parts of these stories has eroded and whatever, and we've taken on each other's story. But I do remember them coming to me and saying, we have Cynthia Nixon.
Oh, how great.
Hilarious.
That
So
is
it's so
hilarious.
funny that, anyway.
The interesting thing
Anyway.
about all of it is the randomness, yet specific journey that you were each on before you got these parts that then became, I would have to say, the essence for the world. You are these characters. It's undeniable that it was you, Kristin, you, Sarah Jessica, and you, Cynthia. So when you started playing the characters the very first year, because the pilot's one thing.
This idea of this contract, right?
Yeah.
And problems with Sarah or whatever. This was one of the things that scared me, was that I wanted to do the show. I love this script. I love the idea of being in New York. It felt different. It felt like there was this dark, sparkly thing inside these pages. And I knew it and I could feel potential. I could feel all those stories. But I was so afraid of a 7-year contract. I
Yeah.
can't even tell you. Like the idea that we
Old studio system.
could not. Well, you got offered to play at Playwrights, or you got a small part in a movie, or you maybe wanted to just like go to, Yugoslavia for the. I don't no, but I'm saying like life had been up to that point more liberty. And one of the things I will say about HBO, because when the show was picked up is when I had the panic. That's when I said to my agents, I'm so terrified of being on a television series for 7 years. And they said, well, let's talk to HBO. And at that point, HBO said, we're HBO. We don't have to answer to advertising dollars. We don't have programming scheduled at September. So why don't you guys do the first season? And if you're not happy, we'll talk about it. If you're not happy, we're not happy. We're all not going to be happy. So all of a sudden, those things that were so scary, it shook out, you know? And it's funny that each of us had our own kind of obstacles or seemingly insurmountable things that were theoretically in the way of joy. It all revealed itself very quickly.
That's
true.
the other thing, too, which people don't kind of remember anymore because it became so visible. But that first year, those first
quiet.
episodes were
It's a
quiet.
bubble.
The entire thing was done and finished before it went on the air. There was no reaction. People didn't even know what we were doing.
No.
Yeah.
We'd be on the street and people would say, what are you filming? And I would say Sex and the City. And they thought we were filming
Taxi Cab Confessions.
or Real
Yes,
Sex,
Real
that
Sex.
HBO documentary
Yes.
where they
Yeah.
would like plaster
sex.
cast people's
Yes,
penises
yes.
and they would walk away and I go, we're not doing that show. We're doing a different show with the word
Right.
sex. So the whole thing was sort of just for each other. And, you know, when
It
you
was
talk
heavenly.
about the evolution of anything, what I think is so exciting and so unforgettable that needs to be put in the record is that we only put one step in front of each other. Each step. Oh, now it's funny. Oh, now it's sad. Oh, when we introduced this element. And it was because of the characters, we kept finding ways to make them grow. But those whole first 12 episodes, I really don't even think, writing from the
It was
writing point of
12?
view, 12, I didn't think we even I didn't understand what we were doing until the last one, which was "Oh Come All You Faithful." I was like,
Oh, yeah.
it's a theme, and there are 4 different strands, and each of them has some sort of a feeling about religion, and that's when I was like, oh, but it's an evolution. And when we started, what did you think of Carrie starting off? Like, what
Well,
did you think? Now you have such
I know. I'm going to really try to have it be its most pure answer to this question. So, what did I think of Carrie Bradshaw the first year? I thought she was like, it felt like somebody in an alternate universe. It was like touchstones that I knew. If you said a place, I knew it. If you said a cross street, I knew it. If you named a brand of clothing, I mostly knew it. Keep in mind, this was New York in the 90s. This was money, politics, Wall Street, publishing. These were the things that were making the news. This was not the 80s with Baryshnikov and ballet. This was the 90s. It was like decadent, and I knew all that. So it felt like a character to me. It felt like a character, like somebody you would see and recognize, but definitely not know.
I mean,
And the more that we get to play these people, to me, what happened is the more human they became,
I agree. They went from primary colors
which I loved.
to
Loved.
shades of that color to eventually, I think, which is now plaid. They're everything. But when I first saw Carrie, the first thing, I'm going to do this with each of you, the first thing I thought was real. And when you talk about those columns where other people talked, Carrie used to look at the camera and do voiceovers and talk to the audience. And the first thing I
Yeah.
said to Darren is, we got to get rid of those.
Yeah.
Because I believe she's real. And I believe this is real. And it's a real person in New York City. And when she turns and looks at the camera and talks to me at home, I'm like, oh, it's a TV show.
There was so much work that, to me, I was like, this is all the things we can't say about this character right now. Like her
Yeah.
feelings, her attitudes, her beliefs about sex, her beliefs about money, her beliefs about men, her beliefs about women, her beliefs about friendships that typically in a book, you would spend chapters, like it
Yeah,
would
well-
unfold. And so it just, and I was like, I've only seen it done well once. And it happened to be my husband in a movie called Ferris Bueller. And he was really good at it. But once that concept and conceit has been used, it felt really hard.
Well, you were really good at it, but I didn't
I
want
didn't think
it.
so.
I didn't believe.
I didn't care for
think
it.
your strength is making me believe you are this person in this real city. And if we are shooting in New York, why not make it real?
I was
Totally.
happy to see it.
Go.
Oh, I
It was
remember.
also a device to get more comedy in the show before
Correct.
we knew where the comedy was coming
Correct.
from. Because you had this Greek chorus of people saying,
Mhm.
"My husband, he doesn't do this to me," and then audience goes, "Oh, sex is funny." My husband doesn't do this to me. Sex is funny, ha ha ha. But then eventually the characters started
Right.
to become themselves. Cynthia, first impression of Miranda.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought, oh, she's very funny. She's got a lot of zingers. She's very hard-edged. She's like a workaholic. She's very cynical. And, you know, it was really fun. I mean, she had such great lines and she was such an interesting character, but it was also such a great thing for me to have the potential to play it because I never do characters like that.
What was your wheelhouse before Miranda?
I would do like, you know, kind of, I had long blonde hair and I would be
Naturally
like
blonde.
naturally blonde hair and I would be like spacey flower girls or, you know, sometimes I would be like the ugly girl. Like I was never, you know, powerful or ambitious, like not even remotely,
Amazing.
right?
But you,
Like,
you played smart.
I played
girls.
smart people, but I played like really, you know, meek people
And
who are not aggressive in any way.
I remember the thing you said is zingers. I was like, oh, joke. Hard joke. Give Miranda the hard jokes, the cynical, sarcastic, really funny underside of a woman that we haven't yet seen on television, someone who's sort of, Carrie was above it writing it in a sort of very literal sense. The whole show was her column. Miranda was like in the moment saying shit that you want to sit next to her at a
well
party.
from the pilot, like when I saw Cynthia's, and forgive me because I don't really remember how all this kind of was layered, but Cynthia at a buffet bar
it's
in
beyond.
what we
Oh,
used
yeah,
to call
doing
the
the
Korean
Korean- the
market.
Korean-
It's so good.
When I saw that
Yeah.
scene
Yeah.
of Cynthia, I think there was, maybe I made it up, hard-boiled eggs. There was like, it was a classic Korean
Yeah.
market.
Tongs.
the chicken,
Tongs,
the
and I was
chicken.
like, oh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
immediately understood Miranda. I was like,
Totally.
oh, she's like, really?
And
You
the
know.
other, I guess the other thing I'll say is like I really wanted her to really look like one of those women who's kind of low on the totem pole in a law firm, and
With
so
the sneakers and
Yeah.
the heels
and
in
so
the bag.
poor
Tote
Pat,
bag
so
and-
poor Pat was like putting me in these
No fun.
really
Pat Field.
Pat Field putting me in these dark suit, and Pat was like gonna shoot herself. But I was like, but that's what she would wear, you know.
Talk about evolution. Okay, now before
Yeah.
we evolve past the dark suits, Charlotte,
Yes.
Kristin,
Yes.
first impressions, aside from the fact that bigger.
Yeah.
When you were on your own, what was your impression?
My impression was that, I mean, there was so little written. And when you read the book, Charlotte was like, do you remember there was like that sequence in the book where the Charlotte character, who was apparently an amalgam of different friends, Candace later
I
said,
think they all are in some weird way.
Yeah.
right. But she made no sense in the book. She was, you know, a work in progress. Like I felt like when I read her, I knew her, I related to her hopefulness and her cheerleading element. You know, like I felt like she was a cheerleader, even though they all disagreed with me all the time. You know?
You know what's interesting?
Yes.
Because my first impression, and I recently watched a bunch of the early seasons in preparation for this. Kristin and Charlotte had this one thing, and it was just a little bit of a, I'm not sure about this. There was a little bit of a
That's
pull away.
funny.
There was a little bit of a, especially Charlotte, which I think is so interesting because Kristin, my experience of Kristin was like, what's happening over there? You know, like, how's this all gonna, like, a little bit of a I would say a side eye would be the phrase. Like a side eye, like watching, which is very, you put right into Charlotte. And when you see the early episodes of The Coffee Shop, there's some scenes actually where Charlotte is actually leaning back when Samantha's talking. Like, how did I get at this table with these other
right.
types? She was such a unique different type. She was such the rules girl that it was really interesting because I remember being on the set with you and seeing you going like, and I still see that to this day, but it's so thrilling to see like what exactly is going to happen now? Like, what are we doing? And Charlotte had that, which I wasn't expecting because the prototype is the preppy, the naive one. But I always saw that weird side eye, especially in the early episodes. Season 3, I was like, we're done. She can't ask about the rules anymore.
Thank God.
This person, this character in real life in Manhattan that looks this way and cares this much would get married. So in that one felt swoop, we broke the formula, which was the brand for single girls in Manhattan, and said, but it dried up for Charlotte. If we believe Charlotte existed, she would force herself to get married. And she could get married. It's like, what? Why not? And so that was huge to say, okay, she's getting married. Now, what's the most Sex in the City version of that we can? So she marries Prince Charming, who is impotent. And the other one was Miranda. Miranda, speaking of hard, you know, like you're saying, like so tough and forced, it got to a point where it's like, if we go any further, she's going to break. The character's going to break because Candace's book was like a box of broken glass.
It was.
It was sharp. And one of the journeys of this
and satiric.
Satiric
And sad.
And deeply sad.
and deeply realistic from her point of view. And in order to bring these people into your home night after night, year after year, we had to soften and emotionalize them a
And
little bit more.
interiorize them.
Interiorize and flower them and make it a little bit less sharp and soft and curly. And Miranda got to the point of brittle. Brilliantly played by you. No flaw there. In the writing, it was like, I can't push any more people away. So we brought in Steve, who would be the soft that would melt the ice, the warm water that would melt the ice. Charlotte, any surprises that you were like, I'm totally surprised it went this way?
Well, I mean, I was certainly relieved when we had to stop talking about the rules because that was like possibly the hardest acting I have ever had to do in my life. Because
The rules was a moment. It was a book of
it
how
was
you
real.
date.
It was real, and I
I
knew it
will
was
say
real.
then when you expressed it at the coffee shop was just typically where we would hear your re-emphasizing of this idea.
My
because of-
speeches.
Yeah, because you believed, because Charlotte had an ideology, it never to me felt well trod. It always felt like it's got to be true, right? It's got to be
Oh.
true.
Yeah, it
It's
was never
got-
strident.
It
I'm
never was,
so
to me, honestly,
flattered to hear
it
that.
never felt, it started to feel heartrending because it was so, it was like dogmatic without any scientific, no basis.
Right.
But just a belief, like sometimes you got to believe. You have to believe to wake up every day. And this is what her ideology was. So
Which is
just to
true.
say, it never
No, that's
felt
true.
tired. It felt sometimes like,
Desperate.
and-
how can you answer it anymore?
She said, you know, there's a lot of sex on this show, and there's a lot of women who are like kind of not, you know, kind of beyond the pale, and they need a nice girl, and they need her there all the time. And, you know,
Kristin.
and she was 100% right, you know? There is a wish fulfillment fantasy about like, wow, these women are having all these sex, but maybe in my own life, I'm not having, I need a character that I can relate to.
Yeah.
Oh, thank God there's Charlotte.
We
Do you know
needed
what I mean?
a counterpoint.
Well,
we needed
unfortunately for the writers having you guys acted, the 4 points of view around those coffee shops were, you know, so clearly drawn. It was like literally a debate club, but you were eating during it. And it was really the thesis of the show, and Carrie summing up all the points of view later, but you all had a very strong primary color to play. And as we got to go further and further and further, we got to start changing Charlotte.
think
Perfect
Just-
example.
Right, and I just
Yeah.
got to say that Charlotte, for all her very traditional, sometimes seemingly prudish points of view, I feel like Charlotte is the most sexually adventurous. Like she's evolved into the most sexually adventurous.
Absolutely.
And the
only
person
that-
with the happiest sex life.
By
yeah.
design.
Well, thank
There
God.
is also still, and you know, this is the beauty of good writing, is that the archetypes that were intentionally created, Miranda will respond like this. Charlotte will do this, Samantha will do this, Carrie will ask the question, then we'll write about it, and we will see this. It's still there.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. It's human.
And the reality is, when you start to see what people can do, you know, just the idea of what people thought you were before you were Charlotte. And then the day in and the day out and the year in and the episodes out, all of a sudden you go, oh God, Kristin's hilarious. But I want to say about the thing you were just saying, she was like, no, I'm not buying this. Same thing as I was talking about, side-eye. Charlotte was like, I don't understand. What are you calling
Right.
this? What's the
Right.
word? And then just like that, she wanted the information.
Yes.
But all the characters became deeper and fuller
Thank God,
because of
yeah.
what you all could do with them. And we'd be
You had
crazy.
to. I remember you coming to me, and I don't know if it's you came to a trailer or something, and you said to me, we're going to start peeling away at this. You know that, right? And I was like, oh my God, this is going to get so good. You were like, we have to. I remember your hands. You were like, oh no, we have to. We can't stay like this. We have to start peeling away. It's going to get ugly. Like in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, of course, because it's not sustainable.
I mean, a
If
calling
it's
card,
only going to be
sex jokes.
not just sex jokes, but a point of view without the complexity and the nuance of the person more and more revealed. If we can count on Miranda, say we need to for purposes of understanding, okay, who are they? What are they? What is the show? What is it? Because we have no point of reference for another show
Or any other
or
show.
anything. We
Right.
couldn't look at another show and say,
Right.
well, they did that, so we should be able to do this.
Right.
We had nothing.
No.
There was no four women talking at a coffee table about anything anywhere on television.
So, but
it
you
didn't
said,
exist.
like,
No.
we're going to start, Samantha's going to become this, and we're going to start seeing this, and we're going to, and I was like, oh, wow, this is going to get really, it's going to get good. Because that leads to a massive fight, ultimately, between Carrie and Miranda, like a real fight, because these people are real now.
Yeah, they are.
And audiences are going to have feelings, and they're going to feel conflicted, or they're going to pick sides, or they're going to be heartbroken at the potential of this friendship being shattered. But you can't
fights.
get there just with people saying,
No.
like, you can't do that. When you do that, you give away your power. You can't do that. When you sleep
Right.
with someone, well, baby, sleep with anybody you want. I say I'm trisexual. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't do that.
That was the calling card.
Right.
The calling card was, look how we're talking about sex, and there's
Right.
these 4 points of view. And then it became these people. It went from sex to love, I think, and the love affair between all of you for characters. And I loved the fights. It's interesting you would talk about the fights. Carrie and Miranda had some amazing
I
knockdowns.
love them.
Knockdowns. Of course, the ultimate was don't go to Paris.
Yeah.
I don't, just say it. You don't like him with
Yep.
Petrovsky, Mikhail Baryshnikov. All right,
In
I
the
don't
vintage
like
shop
him.
don't like him.
on Greenwich Avenue.
Yeah, in the snow after Kristin went out the window.
Yeah.
Not Kristin.
Right.
Kristen Johnson.
The other
Kristen Johnson.
Yes, yes.
The other really interesting fight was Miranda and Charlotte around the pregnancy.
Yeah.
When they didn't see each other on the street. And it was so painful. One was pregnant, not by design, and the other one couldn't get pregnant by no matter what design. And they passed each other on the street. And Miranda says to her, you can't do this, right?
Yeah.
Oof, that was so good.
It was so good, but that was also you changing things as we went, because remember how I was supposed to get pregnant, right? And we were going to be pregnant, we were going to be different mothers, and you were going to kind of showcase the different mothering. And then you came to me, and I was so excited, of course, because Charlotte wanted to get pregnant, so I wanted Charlotte to get pregnant. I didn't personally want to get pregnant necessarily, but you know what I'm saying. I wanted what she wanted, right, for her. And then you came to me, and you were like, I'm really sorry, but Charlotte is not going to be able to get pregnant. I was like, what? And you were like, well, I just don't have enough storylines to have both of you, because I don't know enough people who have the babies, and the women, writing don't have the babies, and
Yet.
yet, exactly. Now they do, but it's not going to be good. And we've got to make it this other thing. And I was like, oh my God, Charlotte's not going to get pregnant. Oh no. And then
when he saw that, he was like, oh, good. This is gonna
exactly.
be good.
And then later on, because I was also, not to that place. We weren't all in that place yet you'd already had Sam, but I wish, like, that's one of those things I look back on and I'm like, God, did I do it enough? Did I do it deep enough? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was so deeply written.
Oh, you did it.
Okay.
And then the other great, very subtle fight that you two might not even remember. Do you
Oh,
remember
I remember.
Do you remember the Carrie Charlotte fight about
At my
seeing?
table. With the ring?
Oh, the loan. There were two.
Okay.
The money one.
I remember that
the
one.
money
Yeah, that
one
was
was
good.
the
It was
big
good.
one.
It was
that
good.
was
What
the
was
first
the
time.
fight you refer?
The first fight was when you're walking by with your bridal dress, when you were going for alterations, and you bump into Carrie and Big coming out of the seedy motel. and she's your maid of
Don't
honor.
Don't remember.
And you're
Oh my
packing
God.
up to leave, and you let her have it.
I do.
Me?
Charlotte lets
I let
Carrie
you
have
it for being in the seedy motel. With
She says,
Pig.
"How would you?"
Because you're the embodiment of
bride.
marriage and wedding
You
and
actually say,
commitment.
Don't remember,
"He's
Sarah.
married.
Oh.
How would you feel if someone did this to me?" And Carrie says, "I would kill them." But it's this. Can I please be wrap your bubble wrap? Now you're wrapping bubble wrap, and I think the voiceover has something about Charlotte and I were wrapped in bubble wrap. But that was a big fight. First one, and then the other one was the money, which was the biggest fight in the writing room ever.
Was it?
The money was like, should Charlotte loan Carrie money for a down payment on her apartment?
And yes, she should.
And the writing room was up in arms. We never talk about. It's so funny. The thing we can't talk about on the show is money. People were really upset about the fact that we were talking about money. And anytime we get around money, it's really like, are we going to say the number? How much money?
To be honest, I've talked to you about that. Like, I get very uncomfortable with numbers because numbers are so specific to a person and circumstances and opportunity.
About
and
how much? How much someone makes, how much someone pays.
Like,
And New
remember
York
that
is
time-
so expensive
York is
that
so-
it just makes
And it-
everybody else who lives anywhere
Totally,
else
but
be
remember
like,
that
what?
time I
What?
told
That's
Bunny
ridiculous.
that I was worth $1 million?
Yeah,
That was
for
the
the-
best.
Wait,
Yeah.
say that again?
The
Do you
prenup.
remember when I had to tell Bunny that I was worth $1 million?
Yes.
And I remember he's so scared to do it.
I'm
you
worth
know?
$1 million.
Yes, I'm worth $1 million. I had to look right at
You know what I
Francis.
remember about that scene, that episode?
What?
Carrie's hair at that engagement party.
Oh, I love
It was
that.
the giant bun hair. The first time we'd seen
was
the
great.
big, the
It was
Princess
so
Leia.
great.
Oh, the Leia.
The
Yeah,
Leia
it
giant
was really
bun
good.
hair
I
at
With
the
the
love
engagement
McQueen.
party.
It was
Kind
really
of
good.
Concord grape-colored McQueen.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Okay.
Like,
Beautiful.
Good.
didn't Willie and I arrive together for that? Yeah, I
Yes.
remember that.
And that's
Over
when,
by Riverside Drive someplace.
Yes.
Yeah.
all right, let's since we're talking
We're back.
about Concord grape. Favorite outfit?
Oh, no.
Oh, Lord.
No.
Cynthia, any
Impossible.
outfit?
I say
It's
that
so
because
hard,
I've loved
Michael.
so many. I've loved every hit and I've loved every miss. And I stand by all of them.
Yeah.
I love them. I love them. And I love when I love when the ladies come to the set. I'm like, oh.
Oh, you're wearing
Oh
that?
my God. I
All right.
could never wear that. I could never wear that.
Oh, please.
So nothing, Cynthia.
No, nothing.
Listen, this is something that people ask us all the time.
We should have answers, but I
And
don't.
Every single time it's like, you know, and
Okay, well-
I just say lipstick skirt.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the outfit that
Yes.
Miranda wore to Stanford and Anthony's wedding.
Oh,
Tell
the-
us, what was it?
Oh,
It's
the
like
low
very
plunge
low
net,
cut.
the
Oh,
black
that
and
was
white.
Oh my God, you looked
good.
amazing.
That was
The black and
good.
white wedding.
Yeah,
yeah.
you looked
Ooh, that was
amazing.
very
Yeah.
good. Very good.
I love the
Amazing.
way everybody looks. So I do want to talk about sex
And the city.
and city. But first, I want to start with sex.
And I just want
Oh
to say
my
that
God.
it was only until like maybe the last season that someone told me, you know,
Was
it's not sex in the
in the-
city.
no, well,
Sarah
welcome to the-
Jessica.
No, wait. I remember being
And I
at
was
so
like,
many events.
wait a minute.
And you'd be like, is it sex?
It's sex
in or
in
is
the
it
city.
and?
Sex
Like
in
when
the
she had to go
city.
speak, she'd be like, right before she'd be like, is it
It's
and or
sex
in?
and or
And it's like,
Anyway.
and.
So there are a couple of sex scenes that
Oh, no.
there are a couple of moments
Oh,
for me,
Michael.
someone as a
Touching the
witness.
third rail,
where-
babe.
No, it's really going beyond the third rail to
Okay.
behind the curtain. If you ever want to see Sarah Jessica laughing as Sarah Jessica, not as Carrie Bradshaw, it's the scene where they go to a tantric sex workshop, and the episode was called "Was It Good for You?" Where
What's that?
Charlotte's
you remember
determined.
the Polish woman, remember?
Polish woman that-
Was she
Oh,
teaching?
my
She was
God.
She was
doing
giving
a
a workshop.
tantric
Did
sex.
somebody
Oh
make
my
us
God.
go?
Charlotte
Charlotte,
was
because the guy fell asleep on her.
Yeah, so
she was
she
like,
was
I
try-
don't know what I'm doing in bed.
So
Right.
Charlotte's over here,
Was
and
that
but,
that was a real couple in real life?
no, it was
No,
an
no.
amazing Polish actress.
Yes, very
and, a- and an
celebrated.
They
actor.
tried
Right.
to convince us that.
Anyway, for the
Right.
audience, they're all sitting on a couch. Now, other important thing about this, it's the first time we let Charlotte wear glasses. Because she was actually writing it all down in a notebook
I'm so
on
excited.
the edge.
I love my glasses.
She loves her glasses.
I really do.
And Sarah Jessica's on this side of the couch, and Cynthia's right next to her, and Kim's in the middle. And the joke is they're watching a guy laying on the floor as this woman gives
Nightmare.
him a hand job. And
It's
she's
a
talking with
nightmare.
that accent, "No, need the perineum. And Cynthia's character has a joke. And it's a great joke, but Sarah Jessica's already there. And Travis, who's our prop, and basically the
Oh,
idea is Miranda gets hit
Travis.
with ejaculate.
I think I also might have gotten here.
Yes. No,
No,
you
no.
did not. You maybe wanted to, but you did
No,
not.
I did
The
not
bit
want
was
to.
Travis, who was our great prop man,
Yeah.
had Jergens lotion in a plastic spoon,
That's
and he was sitting underneath the camera, and he bent the spoon back.
Right.
And the first time he let it rip, and it hit Cynthia perfectly after her joke in the head. And please go look at it. Sarah Jessica is fully laughing as Sarah Jessica. Carrie's nowhere near it. Cynthia's holding on, staying in character, which is what other miraculous time Cynthia has held on in character. And Kristin is just smiling and trying to be hard, Charlotte, but it cracks through. And the other scene where I thought was amazing to see
God.
Sarah, everybody as themselves. We had a scene in the LA episodes. The first one is called Escape from New York, and the second one is called Sex and Another City. And by the way, those episodes were considered, when they were in the first run, they were considered less than, because people from New York thought, well, they're not New York. We don't like these because they're selfish. But I thought they were more than that, because it was thrilling to go someplace new with these same New York characters in LA, which made them New York to me. But there was a very classic story where Carrie rented a Camaro blue car because it matched her purse.
It was a Mustang,
A
baby.
Mustang, right, sorry.
Come
and they
on
were
now.
on a hill, the three of them. Charlotte wasn't there
I
because she
wasn't there,
hadn't come.
but I came to give support.
And the terrible thing happened, which it was a standard car, and it was rigged so that Sarah Jessica could drive it up a hill, and it was parked on a hill. And we were doing this thing where
steep
Carrie
hill.
can't drive up a hill, and it was a Sweetser hill near the Standard. Cynthia's in the back seat, Kim's in the right, and Sarah Jessica's behind the wheel, and the brake line broke, and the car took off down the hill, and Sarah
Backwards.
Jessica backwards steered it. Somehow it started at the bottom of the hill, stopped. And everybody was screaming and panicked. Sarah Jessica got out. Her security guy Q grabbed her and took her up. Kim got out, full Blanche Dubois, collapsed. Like I've just had a collapse of near death.
Well, she was right.
Cynthia's Miranda, who had the sightseeing map in her hand. Cynthia, everybody carries Sarah Jessica and Kim away. Cynthia gets out of the back seat by herself, folds the map, hands it to the prop people, and walks up the hill by herself.
Cynthia was screaming at me in the car, not like screaming at me. I remember her saying, hit the brakes, hit the brakes. And I was like, I can feel my foot on the ground hitting the brake.
Right,
At one point, I was
right.
like, I'm going to try
Broken.
any pedal.
Right.
I'll try any pedal. I was
Right.
like, like an organ player. I was like,
Right.
It was
It
a
was
near-death experience that everybody went home and collapsed.
Yes.
And should we keep filming? It was so tragic. And then that night, Cynthia's doing the
Back on
riding
the ball.
She's back on the ball.
Yeah. I was
Okay,
like, wow, she's
so
back on the
sex.
ball.
I had to come see that. I had to come
How
be part of
awful
it. Yes, dear.
was it to meet a guest star and have to instantly kiss them?
Depended on the guest
Depends.
star.
Depends. Totally.
What was-
Cynthia, what do you say?
Well, I think that, I mean, I had not at that point, and not other than these two shows, done sex scenes ever. But I think the thing that kept it from being just horrific were two things. One was that it was our home. So we felt secure. And
they didn't.
And they didn't.
No.
And these sweet guys who were coming in
We're so nervous.
We're so
Yeah.
nervous. And
Yes.
it was like our job to try and take care of them and let them know that it was going to be okay.
If we
And-
could.
It was the opposite of everything that had always happened to us
Exactly,
in the world.
exactly.
Yes.
We were the interlopers. We were the bait.
Meaning
we were
women.
the thing, women.
Yes.
Actresses.
And we were objectified, and we were the people who were walking onto a set having to take I never did nudity, but like any intimate
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah.
kissing, whatever it was, 100%. And just to add on to that, I know it's not sex necessarily, but I think the thing that felt to me like the hardest is making sure there's so many people that have come onto our show, some for 5 hours, some for 5 days, some for 2 days. There is, to me, nothing harder than stepping onto a moving train
Yes.
where everybody knows literally all the ball bearings of the machinery. And they're joking and talking and reading before and talking and laughing. Someone calls action and we're like, it's the level of comfort is so it's so part of the tissue, like we are our organs. And so, and then it's an intimate scene, a kissing. Doesn't matter what intimacy can be any number of things to people.
Yeah.
And so Cynthia, you're absolutely right.
And the other thing I think that also helped was, just speaking for Miranda, but I think for all of us, so many of the scenes were comedic.
And that's
were like the sex went wrong or the sex was right. So it wasn't like, oh, we have to be really hot right now.
No, I think all of them. And you had said you'd never done a sex scene. So I'm watching the first or 2 seasons, just remember, everything was so simple. Like Charlotte's bedroom was 2 walls.
It was
with a curtain
for
that
the
didn't even
longest
have
time.
a drop.
No.
It was just like a lighting. But what blew me away, second season, second episode, Cynthia, Miranda's doing Dirty Talking Guy with Neil Pepe, the artistic director of the Atlantic Theater, great actor. You are completely naked, completely naked, second season, second episode, and doing comedy, naked comedy. And I was like,
that's our third hour.
I mean, I thought we,
Naked comedy.
I literally thought we got there at some point, but I didn't realize it was so early in the thing that it was completely wide
and
open.
Keep in mind, if you're saying that we did 12 episodes for season 1, it's
That was
not like
14.
we did 28 and
No.
then everybody was really comfortable. It was like that was episode 14.
Right?
So, and if it's episode 14, that means that we all had worked a sum total of not very many days if you think about it.
But
Do
did
you know
you-
what I mean? Like
did-
that's pretty
I mean, yes.
that shows a level of comfort or
I mean-
a lot of other things
Oh,
as well.
Cynthia was very brave. Is this what we're saying?
Well-
I mean, because sometimes I was like, Cynthia, don't. I was
be
so
so brave.
nervous. I was very Charlotte. I was like, why is Eichenberg like holding your breast like that? Like, tell him don't hold the breast like that. It's ew. Like, is anyone
ew.
protecting
Why is
Cynthia?
poor David Eichenberg getting called out?
I'm sorry.
as the bad
I'm
one?
sorry, David.
All the sex was comic.
Yes.
I mean, all those guys, those one-offs. You talk about a guy coming on that there were so many one-offs where these guys just came in and, as you said, were the brunt of the joke.
Yeah.
So you guys did take care of them, and it was always about sex was
Try
funny.
to take
People
care of
used to-
everybody that comes on our set.
Oh my God,
you
so
know,
many people come on.
Because we have so many people. And
And
a lot of them are actors we know, and maybe we've been in audition rooms with them. Maybe we've never worked with them, but we,
Let
we
me tell you, when
know
I run
them.
into them in LA, it's so funny.
Which the guys?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes they weren't my guys. Often they were your guys. And you just feel like you know them. Do you know what I mean? Even if you don't. Like, you just really have, like, an intimacy. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because
Like-
you saw them in that,
Yeah,
like,
we've been through the wars
position.
together.
Like,
yeah.
like the girlfriend position. You know what I mean?
Right,
Basically.
right.
Yeah.
So, speaking of sex,
Yes.
obviously Cynthia was like comfortable and funny. Charlotte,
Yeah.
did anything go too far for Charlotte?
Yes, I've been very clear about this one. I cannot stand, and Cynthia Nixon told me it was funny and that I should do it. I cannot stand the episode where that dude shouts those mean.
Oh,
You
it's
fucking bitch, you
so
fucking
yeah, I don't
whore.
like it, Michael.
Funny.
I don't want to hear it
It's so
anymore. I don't like
funny.
it. I don't like it.
That's-
and I don't like it.
If you'd like to see an episode where Kristin is not
Kristin-
Charlotte, but is Kristin,
It's true.
go to the episode called Are We Sluts, where the guy screams at her.
It's awful.
Every
and-
time he comes, he screams,
It's
"You
awful.
fucking bitch! You
it's
fucking
awful.
whore!"
It's awful.
And
It's
Kristin
awful.
I'm
is
so sorry.
Thank you, Sarah.
I'm so
Thank
sorry.
you,
Well,
Sarah
she's a very
Jessica. I'm
calibrated
sorry.
instrument. You can't say anything to Kristin, the actress, without it going in.
Right.
So
It
this
has an
guy
impact.
yelling at her, "You effing bitch, you effing
And
whore."
so close to me. So close to me. Like I can feel it. It's awful. Okay? It's awful.
You've done so many brave things.
Thank
I
you.
cannot
I
believe
appreciate you,
it.
Sarah.
Do you remember
I
the
appreciate you.
golden retriever blowjob?
Yes, also really problematic because Darren and I both had the golden retrievers. I was like, Darren, come on now. Come on, we have to respect our goldens.
I don't remember
Well,
the details
Sarah-
of that. I
Yeah,
just don't
don't.
remember
All
the
you
Look
need
it
to
details
know
of
is
that.
Kristin had to see something. One of the episodes that I know Sarah Jessica you think went too far was the episode where Carrie farts, which is of course in the episode The Drop. Because that is one of those
It's
times
so
where I
great.
went down to the trailer.
I know exactly. I can remember every single thing. I remember where you were sitting, how you were sitting, what you were wearing. I remember how high the shade was up in that trailer window.
Well, do you want to talk about it?
Tell us.
Well, in typical fashion, you come, you have an idea, you say, and I know, you know, when Michael sits down in a certain way and looks at you in the eye in a
and
certain
smiles.
way
Yeah,
and
you're
smiles,
done.
you
You're
know that
done.
he's about to ask you
Yeah.
something that is going to make you pause.
Yeah.
And your desire is to say, you always want to say yes, because my instinct about Michael's instincts are that he's probably right.
Mhm.
Can I do it? Can I fulfill it? Can I do it and not be nervous, self-conscious, uncomfortable, question it, doubt it? But I knew that it would be good and funny and right. I don't know.
Well, it had never been done. It was not something that was done.
And he was like, you don't understand. It's going to be so great. And then he's going to do this thing. And then you're going to try to like undo it and pretend it never happened. And then he's going to do a thing. And I knew it was, I mean, I knew I didn't have a good argument against it.
Well, no, of
You
course,
know?
but then you threw yourself into it so much so that when you pull a sheet over your head and try to get out of the room, you walk into the door frame. and that's a moment of Chris Note just laughing as Chris Note, not laughing as Mr.
Right,
Big. He just
right.
starts laughing because you hit the
Right.
door frame as
Yeah.
a ghost,
Yeah. As a ghost.
Very funny.
the fart ghost. Let's talk about some of the one-off guys. I'm just going to run down.
The
Oh, God.
actors?
The actors, the giant guest stars that came on and did special things.
You
who
might have
weren't-
to remind me.
Yeah, I will,
you're,
of course.
You're gonna remember.
Who was the guy who picked you up on Single and Fabulous ? 20-something guy.
Oliphant?
No. Bradley Cooper, first job.
Oh, I'm so sorry. See, I'm not going to be good at this. I'm
All
not,
right.
I'm not
I
going
can do it. I
We'll,
can
we'll,
do it.
we'll all leap in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bradley Cooper, first job.
The hair.
Said he could drive a stick to get the job because the character drove a Carmen Ghia. 4 o'clock in the morning, another Friday, outside 14th Street, and I said, Bradley, this is where you drive. You take off. And he goes, I can't drive a stick. And so we changed, we pivoted. Sarah Jessica's character, Carrie, crawls out of the back of the Carmen Ghia and walks herself home.
Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant, of course.
Yeah.
These are Carries. I'm going to go to, I'm getting to
Okay,
yours.
okay.
John Bon Jovi,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
who wanted to pee on you?
John Slattery?
John Slattery, the politician, wanted. Who was your high school boyfriend who was mentally ill?
Oh, David Duchovny?
Right? Yes. L.A. episodes. Who was the charlatan that you had?
Double V.
Vincent
Vaughn.
Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn.
Who did you sleep with twice as two different people?
Justin Theroux.
Right, and his problem was, of course, incompetent.
Right, and then was he the one that's like, "Where's the
Premature
scallion cream cheese?" That was
Yes.
the
Yeah, that's
that was
Valerie
the
Harper was his
premature-
mother.
Valerie
Premature
Harper.
And then
ejaculator.
his first character was a kind of a writer, a rogue poet in
Yeah, yeah.
Washington Square Park.
Yeah,
Which is
you and
where he
Stanford had a
lives.
scene
Sorry,
with him,
sorry.
and we liked
Yes.
him
Say
so
that.
much. It's just,
Yeah.
he's great.
Loved him.
And there was somebody else on the show twice that you know that had scenes with. Do you know who that was?
Oh, it was just somebody that was recently. No,
Nope.
I do.
Sex in the City. A certain person sold you shoes, and a certain person did a
Oh.
shot with you.
Come on.
Andy Cohen.
Andy Cohen.
Right.
2 episodes, same character. He worked,
Yes.
I guess, at Bergdorf's, and
And at the disco.
and he was at the bar with your other
So
hot gay
perfect.
boyfriend, which was Murray Bartlett.
He was
I
great.
love
He
him.
was great.
And
Loved him.
What woman did you kiss?
Alanis
come on,
Morissette
yes.
with a big white flower on and a black rubber dress.
Who sat on the toilet and did their business with the door open that Miranda dated?
Oh my God, I don't even.
See, I'm way over 50, so I can't remember anybody's
Jim
names.
Gaffigan.
Yeah, Jim Gaffigan. I know.
Oh
I can
my
see him. Yeah, he was
gosh.
so great.
Wow.
Who in the first season, the last episode, who was the Catholic guy
Oh,
who had to shower after
I
sex?
know that.
John Benjamin Hickey.
Right,
Mhm.
right. And who was the guy who had to have sex out in public? We called him Jack.
Oh,
the
Will
Ripper.
Arnett.
Will Arnett. And Will,
I see him in LA. It's
I see
plenty.
him too whenever I'm there.
Will Arnett. And Will Arnett was actually hired earlier but couldn't get his visa. He's Canadian. And then we had to let that go. And then he came back as Jack the Ripper. Now, you had a lot of one-offs,
Oh yeah.
so I don't want to go through them, but there is one.
Cynthia remembers
not
them.
have more one-offs than that?
No.
Remember, we were.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, but
Oh no, I had a
Yeah.
lot.
a lot.
But yeah, we did or maybe a magazine did a tally, and Charlotte had
Yeah.
slept with more people than anybody else.
Which
Sure.
is crazy.
Or-
but
Yeah,
also,
because I
when we were
remember
out
on
in New
the-
York, Cynthia would be like, "You kissed that guy,"
I
and
remember
I'd be
on
like,
the
"Really?"
set they did a thing. They did a whiteboard. It was like a Super Bowl thing and they bet, and I came out like way ahead, and it turned out I'd slept with like three people. I was like, how is
you
this
dated,
happening?
You actually dated men for a long time.
Right.
The rest of
Right.
us were like, I got a guy who wants to
Yeah.
put a
Yeah,
flower in
like,
my
how
pussy,
did
that
you know?
happen?
Carrie did very rarely one-offs. I can think of them right now. Jackrabbit sex. Jackrabbit sex.
Who was that?
I
Who
don't
was that?
remember that.
It was a great comedian. I can't think of his
Yeah.
name.
That's okay. Was it the fella who played 76 trombones in the
No.
big...
No,
What?
Craig
Okay.
Bierko, no.
What?
Craig Bierko?
Yeah. No.
No,
Oh.
no.
Yeah,
He was
Craig
a jazz-
Bierko. He was
Was
the
he
jazz
jazz
guy.
musician? He was
Jazz guy.
jazz
Carrie
guy.
dates a jazz guy.
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
Jackrabbit
It's
sex
okay.
was a one-off.
I'm sorry. I want to focus on
Me?
Charlotte's dating. I
Okay.
didn't mean to do that. I apologize.
And there were so many men I can't even mention, but there was one that was wrong that you actually pursued, and it was the gay straight guy. The straight gay guy.
I remember that.
Dan-
That was
Danny
great.
Futterman.
Danny
my
Futterman.
favorite.
Because
of
I
all
remember
time.
even what we were wearing when Willie and I were discussing. Because Stanford and Carrie had come to visit you like at a bakery, and he had jumped on I don't know. He had done.
And you
he
were like-
exhibited.
He had made
you
beautiful
were like-
muffins, and he
and
owned
then
it.
we went back
There
to
was a
another
mouse.
place. We
There
were.
was a mouse.
Yeah, and I was like, no, he's great. And you were like, but he was so great. And I did a sex scene with him that was more sexy than normal because I really liked him and it was fun.
You're like, oh well.
Yeah,
And then he went and stayed in my LA house and met his girlfriend who he then married and had children with.
Oh, that's right.
As the series grew, we started to get deeper with these male characters, and we always brought men in their lives so that they could grow and challenge them. So each of you had significant men. Big, Carrie had Big, Aiden, Berger, and Petrovsky.
Mm-hmm.
What was similar about all of those people?
Nothing.
I see more similarity between Big and Petrovsky than I do including Berger in something and trying to make some connective tissue. I don't see Berger. I see Berger as sort of like this his own
Yeah, by design
special mistake. I mean, I think the only thing that is similar is that Carrie believed in the idea of this kind of love for this person and could defend it even as she, in my head, and sometimes participated in its undoing.
again. Yes.
So
She was committed. She could see it.
yeah, and she was always about all of them troubleshooting. She was often in advance of a problem, sort of seeing something, discussing it or not, internalizing it. And those three presented the most, they were challenging in different ways, but equally as the distraction of it was equal, in my opinion. Berger was almost like an exercise in
Masochism.
tolerance, masochism, patience. Yeah.
By design, again, a character brought in for Carrie trying to go with someone that seems like they should work.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because all those characters seem so exotic, but of all the men, the one that the writers, the ladies in the writing room reflected most realistically was Berger. And it's the one that sort of,
Wow.
they all had a very strong Berger in their life. Everybody else was a little bit
fascinating.
more aspirational and a little bit more of a confection, an invention, a thought. But Berger was the reality of the women in the writing room. They were all like, Berger, 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 Berger
It's
is
so
know
real.
interesting
that.
to me.
Yeah, there was no reach for Berger. Berger was there,
Yeah.
you know?
It seems to me the thing they all have in common is their work is very important to them. Do you know?
That's true.
Like as opposed to the guys you dated, I
Yeah.
did. Like their
No, we
work is
didn't
like a way
really-
to earn a living,
yeah,
but
yeah.
their work was so central and so,
That's true.
you know.
Now let's talk about Miranda's love interest. There was Skipper, played by Ben Weber, Steve, of course, played by David Eigenberg, and then there was Robert, played by Blair Underwood. 3 different men, 3 amazing actors. What do you think is similar in all those guys, if anything?
What is similar in all those guys? Well, I think Robert is the outlier, right? Because he's kind of more of an alpha, right?
Yeah.
and that Skipper and Steve in different ways are up for folding in and letting Miranda be the boss, you know? And Robert's not trying to dominate, but it was just more of a kind of a meeting of equals kind of a
The great thing about Robert was he was the alpha, but then he put "I love you" on a cookie,
Right.
which was the end of the relationship. And how many of those cookies did Cynthia have to
Oh my
eat?
God, I heard about that.
Oh my God,
I
Cynthia had
remember
to
hearing
eat
about
so
that.
many
But
of those
it's so
cookies.
good. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's so funny because, you know, we're so separated by work all the time. We come together, coffee shops, we're in couplets or duets. And the show takes a long time to shoot, I think, relative even to some other shows that
Sure.
are 30 to 43 minutes long. But so, you know, there are whole other worlds that are like, we'll only know about them if they come up talking, if we watch, or we're going to watch the show, and some people watch the episodes and some don't.
It's
So
also personal to your
it's like
individual
such a-
experience.
it's such a personal experience, but you know, you'll hear like, oh my God, it was so funny last night, blah, blah, blah. You know, this one doing this and this one doing that. And also the crew is talking about, you know, we were here till 2 a.m, but you know, it was hilarious because this person had to do this and that actor had to come on. And, but they're so separate. I don't think people realize that we're not there a lot. Like we're not doing phone calls together and we're not always doing, you know, working on the same days. We'll sometimes cross paths in a hair and makeup trailer, but days and days and days could pass. and we don't
Sometimes
see each
even
other.
weeks.
Weeks, yeah.
I mean, the
But that's-
reality is when we realized that the episodes were 4 strands, 4 different characters, each having their own life. Oh, Samantha's the comic one, this one. Charlotte's the relatable personal one. Carrie's that one, and Miranda's this one. They had whole stories that none of the other characters
Had
were
any
in
intersection
until they
at all.
intersected at a coffee shop.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time too that, you know, the way the show is boarded or the way it's shot is you'll go to Miranda Hobbs' apartment and you'll be planted there and put down stakes for 4
Do all of
days.
Miranda's
You know,
stuff,
like
knock it
home
out.
for stuff.
Yeah.
But like it gets very separate for a while, which is also really healthy because then people have a little bit of time and they can recover and take care
And
of
then
like
the excitement when you all
balancing their
come back
checkbook.
together.
And
It's
also
so
the
much fun.
Yeah, it's
excitement when you
great.
watch like this season of And Just Like That. I know we're not talking about that, but like I cannot wait. Like I cannot wait to see. I'm so excited because even though we do the read-throughs, the whole life that happens
Yeah.
that we weren't there for, you're getting to watch like another show.
And some changes from
kind
the
of your
table
show.
read
Yeah.
Sure.
happen.
It's really fascinating.
That's why table reads are important, A, for the writing, but also for each of us to feel we're all in this one moment together.
Yeah.
I know. Remember that time
Really?
we had to do the Zoom? So
Oh, the Zoom
sad.
was so
Michael's
painful.
head was like down.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
just
that
the
was
top
rough.
I
of
felt
his
really
head.
bad about
It's bad
Poor
because, you know,
baby.
what I personally get out of table reads is energy.
I
Yeah.
will say though, Michael, as bad as you felt, the one virtue of that was that we weren't meant to have Corbett because he couldn't come into New York City for that table read.
Right.
So he was able to join that table read, and that was good.
it was
That
fantastic.
was like a nice little.
It was a breath of fresh air
Well, you
then
know,
when we needed it.
I mean, it just really proves that a table read and the show is about an ensemble and how you all feed off each other.
Yes.
And I always say to people, well, it won't be funny because Kristin won't be laughing at what Cynthia's
Right.
doing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you are all sort of
We
treating
were
each
laughing
other
on
to
that
these.
Zoom one, even though it wasn't ideal.
Oh.
We were laughing.
I was
I was
true.
laughing. at
It's
stuff.
true. But I think what is also fascinating is when new people come and they're used to like normal table reads, which are not like our table reads where you're just reading with your head down. Like, no, Michael Patrick has trained us, man. We're doing a show. I'm like, come on, guys, get some energy.
And
Right.
if you want to try a really extreme choice, try it in a table reading.
Yeah, you know,
Totally.
we'll get the scripts, and I try to read sometimes I'm just catching up to reading them by design and by accident in time. But if I have a question about a scene or lines or words or rhythms, I always try to remember myself. Just let Michael hear it this way before you start asking questions or saying, "Can we change this?" Just let him hear it. Then you go plead your case before the court
Definitely, yeah.
because it's important to hear it all as he heard it, as he typed it and wrote it and imagined it, so he can either choose to agree and see or say no. Because what you don't know, Sarah Jessica, is 2 episodes from now, Carol, don't tell me, I don't mind. Okay, I understand.
But that's a lovely thing to say, and it's true and it's needed. But the other thing about the table read for me and the writers is if something doesn't work, we know it's not you guys. we just take it away
Yeah.
because it's kind of couture writing. It's cut for you. And then we can hear, well, that's a joke. Carrie doesn't do jokes. That's got to go. She makes observations. Charlotte's leading men.
Oh, yes.
Kyle
Yeah.
McDougal.
Yeah.
That's
What am I going to say?
Kyle MacLachlan, Trey McDougal, perfect
Yes.
Prince Charming.
Dreamboat.
Yes. Very dreamy. As you know, we all fell in love with him. He wasn't supposed to stay as long as he did, and we're really happy that he did.
He was so game to
He
say,
was.
well, the first
Such a
thing when I met
sweetheart.
Kyle
Love
and I
him.
said, look,
Okey
you're a
dokey.
giant name. You're a very well-respected
Is
actor.
that what he
We-
does? Okie dokie.
Alrighty.
Oh, alrighty.
All righty then.
All righty then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please come on the show. And your character's impotent. And then his eyes lit up. He was like, oh, that's really interesting. And
I
then
know.
because of his Scottish heritage, and we just kept
That works.
going down that road. When you get somebody that's special, you start leaning in. Corbett's Aiden is so special that it just started to become more and more of his vibe. And you two were a very heartbreaking couple.
Oh, great. They were so
Oh,
great.
very
But in the
attractive
evolution, just like
couple.
we brought Steve in to see what would happen with Miranda, then we brought Harry in because Charlotte had such an ideal. And what we've been trying to do with this series all along is have these sacred cows of what people think society wants them to be, and then sort of slay them and say, okay, Charlotte is so convinced she has to be Snow White with Prince Charming that if that blows up, who is she?
It's
And-
true. And when I see some of those, in this 25th anniversary, all these retrospective-y clip things have been happening. And I see myself in some of those scenes with the breakup. Charlotte is so uncomfortable with her expression and feelings to him during the breakup. Do you know what I mean? She's so stunned, I can't believe this is happening to
Right.
me. I can't believe this is how it's unfolding. My fantasy is in shatters at my feet, and I literally don't know what to say. And I look at myself and I'm shocked. I'm like, who is that? It's interesting.
Yeah,
But
it's-
that was very Charlotte. She had no plan for that. That was outside her imagination, which is what then broke her apart to
I think
open
one of
for
the
Harry.
Yeah.
hardest things was when Evan came in, who is a wonderful actor, that the color that was supposed to happen was heat and lust. And Charlotte's got to just be on him. And it was very hard to say, now you have, what is it? Unbridled lust for someone, and you have to jump him. It was a very interesting
It was
demand.
hard. It was very hard.
It had nothing to do with the actor, but it was supposed to be instant.
Right.
And you had to actually want to have sex with him. There's two other leading men on the show that weren't one-offs and stayed around. And that's
Aw.
Mario Cantone, Anthony Marantino, who we brought in for Charlotte to have a
Yes.
gay best friend because she would. And also we wanted
100%.
to throw in the mix. Okay, everybody thinks gay guys just get along. So we brought in hilarious,
It was so good.
opinionated Anthony, played by Mario Cantone brilliantly, to go opposite Stanford,
Yeah.
played by Willie Garson. And Stanford was ground zero for Carrie.
Wasn't that the first stuff you shot? Was you and Willie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stanford was ground
Yeah.
zero for Willie.
Mm-hmm.
For you and Willie was just the beginning. It was her sounding board.
Mm-hmm.
You would walk down the street talking,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very unique. Willie had such a beautiful, unexpected delivery.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of above it and yet perfect.
Yeah. He was a real person in Carrie's life. He was in some ways been around forever person
Yeah.
in her life.
Mhm. So we did sex, the city, filming in New York.
There is no show without our city, not just any city, our city. The city was ours.
Mm.
We were shooting the city. I feel like we exploited every cross street, every avenue. We were we're going to do this scene in the front of that storefront, this cross street, that thing.
Mhm.
And there isn't, I mean, a day or a week that goes by where I'm not walking down a street in our city and I'm like, oh, shot that scene there, walked with this person there, fell there, had coffee there. This city has been, and we haven't even scratched the surface. There
Well, it's ever changing.
mountains and mountains of neighborhoods,
Oh,
cross
how many
streets,
times have you
whatever.
said we shot here when it was that?
Blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah.
And now
right.
we're shooting in a new version of a restaurant that was not
Right,
that.
right.
And the fact of the matter is, it started much like the evolution of the show. Can we film here? Can we film here? Don't know what it is. By season 3, when the show had caught on and was a zeitgeisty builder, the city opened up. We could film anywhere, and people were
That's
really
how it was
thrilled.
with the fashion. We'd be like, can we borrow? Can we borrow? Can we borrow? And
Right.
finally, some person let us in, and it was the gateway to access to finally getting a bag from
Right.
this person,
but I
that
would say
person.
you opened those doors. Like you had the relationships and you taught, at least you taught me like how to have a good relationship with a fashion house and having respect for what they do and returning things and going to their shows if they asked you and doing the things that it was a job. It was
Yeah, it
another
was like
job
the library.
and you knew how to do it.
You know,
totally.
what is the honorable way of like
Exactly.
loaning, borrowing, returning, and
But you
condition in
opened
which
those
we.
doors.
But the city, I think, too, because I remember some of those early locations, they were down and dirty. Like,
Yeah.
we'd be in the smallest apartment in the world shooting, and we would be trying to get a camera, never mind 2 cameras, which we most frequently did. We mostly didn't have 2 cameras.
Yeah, and we would
you
have
know,
Steadicam. Remember?
and
Joe would get the
yes, and
Steadicam.
it was always like pretty rogue, pretty down and dirty, you know, narrow staircases, small footprints. We weren't polluting the streets with campers and trailers. It was but
A
keep
little
in
bit.
mind we were on film and we were rolling down big, huge lights down avenues. I
That
mean,
was cute.
big lights. We don't roll around big lights anymore because we
No.
don't get to shoot on film. So the light, like, so much of it's different. It's grown in scope on our streets and it's shrunk. It's like had this weird retraction
That's
and
true.
growth at the
That's
same
true.
time. But the city's been, there's nothing like shooting in the city.
100%.
And boy, when you think you're tired and you're dragging your rear end, you know, day 4 of a long week, and then you go through hair and makeup 3:34 in the morning, and you're like, this is inhumane, this is crazy, what am I doing? But then you get to the set and all that
yeah,
stuff,
the energy.
that
yeah,
thing
yeah,
that
yeah,
happens when you walk on the set and the crew's ready and cameras are up, and you know, like
And then
there's
a
like
garbage truck goes by and says, "Hey,
Totally,
Carrie,
yeah.
way to go!"
Oh, wait. Do you guys remember 6th Avenue in the Village on the Friday night? And they had our chairs in the gutter. Our chairs were lined up in the gutter.
No.
And we were like, it was kind of that summer that it was super hot and happening, you know, 3rd season probably. And we had to do like 5-block walk and talk, which was really, really hard. Up and down the curbs. And it was like a huge
I
challenge.
do. I
And
feel like
then-
it was Spiller.
It might have been. It
I
might
think
have
it was
been.
Spiller,
And
maybe.
at one point we went to like a bodega and we were like, could we just stand here in your doorway because we can't be out on the street because people were coming? And they were like, okay. And they were all like, oh, the girls are here in our bodega. And then we're trying to walk. We're doing good. We're like on block 3, right? We're doing good with our dialogue. We're walking, we're talking. It's all good. And then a car of dudes drives by and it's like, Sex in the City, bitches. And we were like, darn it. You ruined our take. We almost had it.
It did go from completely like Betty Ann Fishman, who you mentioned used to be our first AD, and she could say, I could drop Sarah Jessica in the middle of 5th Avenue. No one even knew what was happening. We would put you in the middle of real people
Yeah.
on 5th Avenue and put a camera way down at the end of the
Yeah,
block to get a
long
walk and
lens.
talk.
Oh, I
And
loved
they
it.
had no idea what was
Loved
happening.
it, great.
Loved
Real
it.
people.
I
And now,
know.
yeah, I mean, when we shot the movies, I remember when we shot the wedding in front of the library.
The crowd
There
control.
were maybe 500 people there.
Yeah.
And what was so sweet about it was they were like a theater audience.
Yeah.
We asked them, please don't take pictures or make noises between action and cut. And they would go, okay.
I know.
And then it would be like they were seeing this magical thing happen. They're ladies in their city. They happened to be walking by, or they knew we were there because the Post put a schedule on.
I love that. This is like a really strong memory of being with Cynthia and Kristin on the day of the wedding.
And the reason it was just the 3 of you, Carrie, Miranda, and Charlotte in the scene is that Samantha had stayed behind at the wedding to control all the PR disaster.
Yep. And they, we were shooting at the Bryant Park Library, at the big, library with patients and what are the lions called?
I don't know.
Patients and
The
virtue.
lions.
And up just in a room together, up in
With the tapestries.
we were just in in
Okay.
a hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
They gave us. We shared
Across-
one
yeah, yeah, yeah.
one room at whatever hotel was
W.
across the street. It was just the 3 of us just in there together on Carrie's wedding day. I just thought it was so beautiful.
It was.
And people were being quiet. You know, you had this dress on that you had to take off in between because she couldn't walk. It was a beautiful
Zach Posen.
The black
Zach
swan.
Posen dress. It was unbelievable. And everybody was being like, we were playing music. I don't know if you remember. It was just thoughtful and quiet. We knew what we had to do when we got out on that side street, you know, with him pulling up and those flowers and her pulling Carrie away and her giving
Screaming
him that
no.
look and you. And it just was like so, oh, it makes me weepy. It just was so cozy. And we just knew what we had to do. We knew we weren't going to talk about it. And we knew we had to save it. And we had blocked it by the numbers. You're going to be here and you're going to be here. And we're going to set the cameras up and then go up and get dressed. And we're going to give you a 15-minute warning to get back in that dress, back in your dress, back in your dress. And then, you know, just like the streets like played all these roles in our life, you know, like our professional lives. And like we were there for so many milestone moments for each other in the characters' lives.
I think that the ongoing gift for me is that people acknowledge that all the roles you've played in their lives. People will come up to me on the street and thank me for the show. And I say, thank you for the show.
Oh my God, thank you.
And I say, thank you for all of you for the show, because it's a gift that could never have happened without this group of people. This moment in time that somehow lasted 25 years. It's a great legacy, and it's still growing. It's still evolving, and now into Just Like That. So,
Well, thank you, Michael.
so it's been Sex and the City, and it's been our last 25 years together. How thrilling.
Just amazing that 25 years have passed.
It's crazy.
It's incredible.
We're so lucky.
Yeah, really lucky. Now I know what Susan Lucci feels like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
And to every writer
Yes.
who contributed every morsel, every personal experience, every courageous story that embarrassed them, that you've all found a way to weave into the stories that we got to tell, which we know is mandatory. That a story have happened in a life. That's the only way it gets shared. And so to every writer,
Absolutely.
every person on your writing
Amazing.
staff in the writing room, thank you.
Yes.
Well, that is the end of this very special anniversary episode of And Just Like That, the Writers Podcast. Thank you so much, my friends and muses, Sarah Jessica Parker, Cynthia Nixon, and Kristin Davis, for joining us today. Stream And Just Like That Season 2 starting June 22nd on Max, and listen to And Just Like That, The Writer's Room on Max or wherever you get your podcasts.
And Just Like That, The Writer's Room is produced by Neon Hum Media for Max. At Neon Hum, Sharon Morris is the executive producer. Joanna Clay is the lead producer. Sammy Allison is our head of production. Zoe Culkin is our associate producer. Sam Baer is our engineer. That's it for the show. Thank you for listening.